All right, what's going on, guys? It's Ryan here, and I just got back from the gym. Hit some shoulders, hit some back, hit some triceps. Great time. I know my split is a little weird, but it works for me. It gets me jacked, gets me healthy, and I love it. But I was at the gym, right? And I overheard a conversation that I kind of wanted to talk about today. So I was at the cable pull machine. I was just hitting back. My friend walks over. I take my AirPods out and I dab him up. He leaves. But before I put my AirPods back in, I overhear a conversation from a couple guys over at the cable machines right next to me. Right. Two of them were pretty big. Definitely over 200 pounds, right? And they looked really good. I would say they're definitely bulking and taking it to the extremity. They have a good amount of body fat too. But they were, I digress, in good shape. And then their friend walks over, and he was probably about 160, 170 pounds, and clearly a newbie, right? And he came up to them, he dabbed them up. They were all clearly friends. And this guy said, not word for word, but he said something along the lines of, I'm trying to get like you guys, like I'm trying to be above 200 pounds. I'm tired of being victim weight. You may have heard this term victim weight before, and it's essentially saying that if you are below 200 pounds, you are more susceptible to getting your ass kicked in a fight. Which your first initial thought would probably be something along the lines of, well, duh, if someone is, 30 or 40 pounds less than someone who's 400 or 200 pounds, they're probably getting their ass kicked. And I'm not saying you're, wrong, but here's the thing. If you take two guys, let's say the first one is like these guys, they're above 200 pounds or at 200 pounds, and they've been lifting for a significant period of time, but that's all they do. If you take that guy and you put him in a boxing ring, right, against someone who is, let's say, 180 pounds, but has been boxing all their life and has never even really touched a heavy weight in their life. They've only been boxing or, doing Krav Maga or doing another form of martial art, right? That guy's winning. The second guy is winning because he has trained for a long time on speed, on how to punch, on how to get out of a situation, how to get out of that clench. If you watch boxing or if you box yourself, you know these terms. But that guy is winning over the guy who only identifies as someone who is above 200 pounds. Now, let me preface this by saying, if lifting is all you want to do and you just want to get as big as possible, there's nothing wrong with that on a surface level. But if that's all you're obsessed with, and kind of like what I was talking about in my last video, if that's all you're obsessed over, and you put the body weight of being over 200 pounds or whatever body weight it is on a pedestal, then you're probably insecure and you probably have body dysmorphia like I had. And there's nothing wrong with that unless you don't fix it. You need to fix that issue. So this whole idea of victim weight, I think, is kind of stupid. And let me just also say that if you actually just want to lift, right, and you have a realistic goal of gaining 5 to 10 pounds of muscle in a matter of 3, 4, 5, 6 months, that's completely fine, as long as your happiness and security with yourself relies on that, right? Like I said, we should go at our own pace and our own progression system, and we do have to try our best. But this whole idea of victim weight kind of pisses me off because, I used to think that before I got into boxing that I was victim weight. But then as I gained a lot more confidence through boxing and combining it with lifting, I realized that's kind of bullshit. I want to tell you a story. So I've been working at the same restaurant for about 5 years now, right? And I used to have a friend that worked at the same place too. And when I was going through my body dysmorphic period and my mental health was all screwed up, I only identified with fitness as the main part of my life, he saw me go through that. He also saw me get out of that when I started boxing and when I started not putting a fitness influencer who is probably on steroids' body on a pedestal. That's when my body dysmorphia stopped, when I just accepted myself for who I am and went at my own pace and tried my best every time I hit the gym. So he saw me go through my little journey there, because when I stopped obsessing over that stuff, then the gains really started to come, right? But he was inspired by my journey, because I'm not trying to sound narcissistic here, but I'm 160 pounds, I got good relative strength, I look good, I'm lean, I'm muscular, X, Y, and Z, right? I'm not trying to sound narcissistic, but that's just the truth. I put a lot of work in, right? And I inspired him to also start hitting the gym. And he has the same body composition as me. He's an ectomorph, he's thin, but he's got better genetics than me, actually. So he started lifting, right? And he went on this period of, I would say 6 to 8 months where he gained a lot of muscle. This man looked great. And I also want to say that, not trying to sound fruity over here, but he objectively was an attractive man. And he put a lot of work in this initial period, got a lot of newbie gains, and he was really fit. He was really aesthetic, abs popping, shoulders popping, everything. And every time I would compliment him, right? Every time I'd be like, good shit, dab him up, like, you're doing great, man. He would say something that was self-detrimental to himself. He would say something like, I'm nowhere near where I want to be yet. I need to get to 200 pounds. This whole idea of victim weight started coming into his mind, because he was like around the same weight as I am right now, like 160, 170. And he was essentially doing what I did and putting these other guys' physique, like Sam Solik and Chris Bumstead's physiques, on a pedestal. Which, by the way, if you're fans of those guys, there's nothing wrong with that, unless you're drinking a gallon of chocolate milk in the morning, like a dummy. That's what's wrong with that. Because those guys are on steroids. But anyway, he continues on this path, and his body dysmorphia is very apparent and very increasing too. And he eventually actually gets a shoulder injury. Now, if you've had a shoulder injury before, those things suck. You cannot lift. You need to rest it, and you need to get your ass into physical therapy. But he ignored his injury, and he kept pushing himself and pushing through that injury. And he screwed himself even more. His progress stagnated significantly, but he just kept ignoring it, and he kept doing it. And instead of resting it, he went online and bought peptides, this peptide subscription. Now, if you don't know what peptides are, they're not exactly steroids, but they are growth and recovery enhancers. And you inject them in your ass. And it's supposed to help with like growth and stuff. It doesn't have testosterone in it, but it's unnecessary for a military-age male to use when there's nothing wrong with it. The diagnosis was right, he had a shoulder injury, but the solution was wrong. He needed rest over this peptide. Because the peptide didn't even help him. He would just inject that into his ass cheek every other day, and it just didn't help him at all. And I continuously saw his mental health go down. And to the point where he actually kind of became an asshole. I stopped enjoying working with him because he was just so self-absorbed and self-obsessed and talking shit to other guys who were bigger than him, to the point where he just had to be better than everyone else, because his identity relied on how his body looked and performed when it could not perform as it was because he had a damn injury. He would do this all the time, and it got very annoying. And one day, he actually challenged me. The story's kind of sad, honestly, but it's kind of funny too. One day he challenged me to a push-up competition. And he regretted this immediately, because I was like, all right, bro, let's do a push-up competition then. And immediately he knew he was gonna lose. He was talking shit, but he couldn't back it up. But he kind of pissed me off before, so I, went through with it. I was like, all right, if you want to, do a push-up competition, let's go right now. And I did 68 push-ups in a row because I got really good relative strength. I focus on that rather than lifting, 225 pounds, 300 pounds, whatever. So I got 68 push-ups in a row. He did not want to do it because at this point, he was making it a big deal, and all the other coworkers, came around to watch and were laughing and were egging him on. And he did about 30 push-ups, which isn't bad at all. Like, it's only half of what I got, but, I've been lifting and doing push-ups longer than he was. And he only did 30. And I was like, I literally told him, I was like, bro, it's all good. You can lift more than me anyway, because he actually could. But he was so embarrassed, so insecure, had so much body dysmorphia that he walked out of the store on his shift. He left and did not come back, which resulted in him getting fired. And it also resulted in me losing a friend because he was so insecure with himself that he couldn't take the L of losing a push-up competition. That's how he lost not just me, but all the other guys who were, witnessing this. They lost respect for him too. And he's not doing so well right now, as I've heard, but I hope he bounces back. But it just really goes to show how much of a problem body dysmorphia can be and ruin your confidence, ruin your self-esteem, get you hyper-fixated on something that in the long run doesn't even matter, especially if you have a shoulder injury that you need to fix. I lost a friend over that. And you can take this as me like, shit talking him or whatever, but I really want to use his example to convey to you that you need to live in the present and you need to be realistic. That does not mean you shouldn't strive for greatness and try your little heart out in the gym, but if you get to the point where you're so insecure with yourself that you can't even take an L in a friendly competition of push-ups, you got a problem, bro. You have a problem. But that's all I really wanted to say today. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.